Pucks with Haggs
is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
Welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. I believe this is the 139th episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, so thank you very much, as always, for listening. I am your host, Joe Haggerty. You can find my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. Subscribe and get yourself a premium membership. You get all of my NHL and Bruins writing sent straight directly to your inbox. I also write columns 3 times a week for the Boston Sports Journal, so check out bostonsportsjournal.com. Not just for my Bruins writing, great Celtics writing, awesome Patriots stuff with Greg Bedard and Mike Giardi, excellent Red Sox coverage as well. So it's like your one-stop shop for all Boston sports. So make sure and check out Boston Sports Journal and get yourself a membership there as well. Let's also thank our sponsors real quick. We're going to have a mailbag episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast today. A lot of questions, a lot of angry fans, a lot of variations on the same theme. I think a lot of Bruins fans kind of want to see the same thing right now, especially after a frustrating Saturday night 3-2 overtime loss to the Ottawa Senators. So we'll be talking a lot about the coaching, Jim Montgomery, a lot of questions about that, and just moves this Bruins team needs to make in general. But let's first thank our sponsors, Prize Picks, of course. As always, we love Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $5 bonus. It's guaranteed, a $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. And also, if you want tickets to the Celtics, you want Patriots tickets, you want Bruins tickets, comedy tickets, concert tickets, any kind of tickets whatsoever, take the guesswork out of buying tickets by going with our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. That's code CLNS. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right. Let's go over this real quick. Bruins kind of back and forth at 500, 7-7-2, I think it is right now. They have 16 points. They're in a playoff spot in the Atlantic Division, but another frustrating loss, 3-2 overtime to the Ottawa Senators on Saturday night. Linus Ullmark's return to TD Garden, which was successful for him. He got the win. He played really well. He got his goalie hug with Jeremy Swayman before the game started. He had a really nice video tribute and ovation where he got the love from Bruins fans. He got to, put his stick up in the air and give them thanks and really have a warm feeling all around. So it was a great moment for Linus Ullmark and for Bruins fans that didn't really get to say goodbye after he was traded in the summertime and sort of got to give him that last ovation that he really, I'm sure, wanted in his return to the Garden with the Ottawa Senators. So a big part of the sort of theme of the game was Linus Ullmark returning to Boston. But, and I was asked about this actually when I did a sports radio station up in Ottawa had me on earlier this week and kind of asked me like how big the hype was on Linus coming back to Boston. And I said, he's going to get his ovation. He'll get a video tribute. It'll be warm. It'll be appreciative. They really liked Linus Ullmark. There'll be goalie hugs with Swayman, all that stuff. I said, but at the same time, I think it's way overshadowed and hasn't really been talked about because Bruins fans are obsessed right now with the Bruins not playing well and not playing consistently. And it's like one step forward, one step back, where it seems like they're kind of figuring things out and then they shoot themselves in the foot with the same mistakes and end up losing. And in this game against Ottawa, this 3-2 overtime loss, Brady Tkachuk, awesome game. He had like 20 shot attempts, like 12 shots on net, ends up with the game-winning goal, was just dominant, best player on the ice by far, and showed everything he could do. And if like there's any fans out there that wouldn't be ready to trade like half their roster for Brady Tkachuk, even the Bruins, like if the Bruins could get him, I don't care what the price would be, I would pay it because he is the prototypical power forward in today's NHL, dominant offensively, physical, big, strong, can set up his teammates, smart, like good teammate, all that stuff, good leader. He showed all that stuff in the game. And then he finally breaks out 19 seconds into overtime. It's a 3-on-1 odd man rush, and he just snaps one past Jeremy Swayman and wins it for the Ottawa Senators. But I would say the big things to look at, the big problem areas in this game, once again, penalties. The Bruins took a bunch of penalties. Once again, they gave up a power play goal. The penalty kill continues to be a problem. The power play is letting them down. It did again in this game. They're just disappearing acts for this Boston Bruins team, especially offensively. And we saw that in the third period. 0 shots on net in the third period of a 2-2 hockey game. Not a single shot on net. They couldn't manage to get a single shot on net in a game that was tied, where they could have won it in regulation, and instead just went into offensive hibernation, got outshot 12-0 by Ottawa, couldn't scrape up anything offensively, couldn't do anything or get any traction whatsoever, and didn't even land a shot on net. And then they end up losing it very quickly in overtime. So it seemed like they were kind of limping to the finish of that game. And even more concerning after the loss is Jim Montgomery's asked about the third period being a problem and like how you solve it or what the answers are. And he basically says, I don't know. I don't have any answers for it. And, I just don't, even if you fake it till you make it as a coach, I think you have to come up with something after a loss and say, these are the reasons, or this is who's being held accountable, or these are the problems. Simply having a look on your face, a kind of blank look of, I don't know, I don't have any answers for it right now, we're going to have to get answers, is not good enough as the head coach of an NHL team. You better damn well have answers after every time you lose, and have explanations, have players that weren't pulling on the rope, have issues that need to be corrected. It just not good enough, just like it's not good enough for the players to not have a shot on net in the third period. It is not good enough for an NHL coach to have no explanation for it afterwards and no answers and be like, I don't know. We're gonna have to think about it. Or we'll go watch the video. That's not, the coach has to have answers, some kind of answer, even if it's not necessarily exactly the right answers. Have something, have something that you say, we're going to work on this, or, this is a problem area, or this really bothered us in the third period. If you watch your team do nothing, do jack for 20 minutes in the third period of a tie game, and you kind of say, I'm not even sure, I don't have any answers for it afterwards, that's not really what anybody's looking for. I think you've got to project confidence. You've got to project that what the problems are and how you're going to fix them immediately after a loss. You need to be the face after the loss that's projecting strength, resiliency, all that stuff. And I think there's just times, and it's happened in the playoffs too, where you just get these strange answers from Jim Montgomery as to explaining how they're going to do better or what just happened and how they go from there. And I think it's part of the reason why there's eventually going to be a coaching change here and of a replacement. I think there are times where the moment gets too big, or where things speed up, and there's no explanation afterwards, and there's not an ability to really dissect what just happened quickly afterwards and dissect the problems and be able to articulate it. And I think you kind of have to do that as a head coach in the NHL. You have to be able to do those things. So I took that as a problem. And also the Sharks are starting to circle here. Kevin Paul Dupont asked for the game, friend of the podcast, been on here plenty of times. I'm sure we'll have him on again soon. Started in on asking him if he feels like the players aren't listening, if he feels like the message isn't getting through. And he denied it and basically got a little sort of, the mode of you write what you want, or you're going to write what you want, or, you figure that out in the media, that kind of a thing, throwing it back at us, which I think it's a legitimate question. And I think when the players are making the same mistakes over and over again, taking penalties, failing on the penalty kill, not scoring on the power play, disappearing offensively, some guys continuing to struggle, when all these things are consistently happening and the same mistakes are happening over and over again, I think you have to start asking if the players aren't getting the message. If you talk about discipline, and then the next game, you talk about fixing discipline, being better, all that stuff, and then the very next game, you take a penalty the first shift of the game, like an offensive zone penalty, are you showing that you're actually receiving the message? Or are you showing that you're paying it lip service and then going out and doing whatever you feel like doing? These are legitimate questions. And I think we've seen this a lot with this Bruins team this year, where they're mentally making a lot of mistakes. They're making effort mistakes. They're making, simple mental errors that they shouldn't be making. They're definitely having execution problems when it comes to the special teams units. So when you look at all these things and they're repeating mistakes over and over again, I think that's when you have to, A, certainly hold the players accountable, but B, I think, like, wonder if the message isn't getting through, if like things aren't being corrected, and if things aren't getting any better, that have consistently been a problem all season. And like, let's be honest, like the last couple of years, and I would say all 3 years, but certainly the last 2 years, the penalty thing's been a huge problem under Jim Montgomery. There's been a very big lack of discipline when it comes to not taking penalties on this team consistently for the last few years. So this isn't a new problem. This has been something that's been going on. I mean, we saw 8 or 9 too many men on the ice penalties in the playoffs last year. I think we've seen a lot of real big problems when it comes to this that have not been properly addressed. And that's a reflection on the coaching, as far as I'm concerned. That's my opinion. And that's what I see. And I'm wondering if the Bruins if their management sees the same thing. I'm wondering if this, even though I'm sure there's negotiations going on for a contract for Jim Montgomery, like, if they were certain he was their guy, they would have signed him to an extension in the summertime. I don't think it would have spilled over into the regular season. And I think now we're seeing a lot of questions about him. We're seeing not exactly any vote of confidence from Don Sweeney or Cam Neely when it comes to the coaching. And we're seeing a lot of questions when they struggle. So I think they've kind of made this situation, they've allowed it to get to this point. And I think now it's getting to a point where it needs to be resolved one way or the other. Otherwise these questions are going to continue to linger. And I think the players and the way they play and the way they perform and respond to what's going on is very much a legitimate question as well. All right, let's take a break from the show to talk about our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you'll watch the winnings roll right in. It's fun and it's super simple. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this hockey season. Which players are going off? Which ones aren't? Which ones are lighting the lamp? Which ones are trying to do the Michigan? You can figure out all that stuff using Prize Picks. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. And don't forget about the goalies being red hot and standing on their head either. Don't get dazzled by all the highlight reel goals. Think about your goalies too. Let's see a little goalie love in this hockey world, especially at Prize Picks. All right, this week on Prize Picks, I'm looking at the hockey board and selecting Nathan MacKinnon for more than 0.5 goals and Evander Kane for more than 1.5 hits. Evander Kane running around, throwing the body at people. Also, David Pastrnak for more than 2.5 shots on goal. Not necessarily goals right now, though, because the Bruins are struggling, and Sidney Crosby for more than 0.5 points. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. What could be better than that? You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, let's get to some questions here. Bruins J Raps on Twitter. Hard to say roster is any worse than last year. I agree. It could even be better on paper. I agree. Just looks like guys are checked out almost top to bottom. It's hard to pick more than 3 or 4 guys pulling their weight. And I would say game to game, it's that way. Usually there's 3 or 4 guys within a game that are absolutely getting it done. And it can change from game to game, or like a pockets of games where they're playing well. And then it goes to somebody else. But I think the players are getting sick of the constant line juggling. This has to drive them all insane. Personal gripe, Trent Frederick is ridiculously overrated. Guys may love him in the room, but he's just not a guy on the ice. All right, thanks, Bruins J Raps. I disagree with you on Trent Frederick. I think he's a good player. I think he's got a ton of potential. He showed it last year. He put up good numbers, and he does it while being a big, strong power forward type that when he's right is a big physical factor on the ice. There's no doubt about it. Is he dominant? No, he definitely isn't, but I think he's a good player, and I think he's definitely the kind of player you want on your roster if you want to be a good, successful playoff team. I think he's obviously going through struggles right now. He's having as tough a time as anybody in the beginning of the season, and he's been busted down to the fourth line the last couple of games as a result of it. He's got like 1 goal in 16 games. He's a minus player. He's having a hard time, but I think he's going to come out of it. I have no doubts about him. One thing I did see when I'd watched him, specifically I watched him the other day just to see if there was anything I could pick up on that he was doing. And the one thing I did notice with him is that he was forcing the puck to the point a lot in the offensive zone, and it was getting turned over. It was turning into like a play that wasn't really going to lead to anything, and then the puck started going the other way. He did it 3 or 4 times, or at least a couple, where he was forcing it to a defenseman at the point, or he was forcing it to the point in general. Where I think the play for him and whatever line he plays on and he was doing it much better against Ottawa on Saturday night, was just getting the puck down low in the corner or behind their net and getting to work, and either putting it in a position where his teammates could make a good play on it, or putting it in a position where he could go after it too and use his size and strength to really keep them trapped in. And I think he's much better doing that than trying to work, trying to make these really complicated, difficult plays to the point. When keeping it simple and just dumping it down low is a great play always. And I think for him, until he gets his confidence fully back to where it is, I think that's a great thing for him to do is to play simple, get pucks down low, just like really like pound the D and work on keeping them hemmed into their end and putting pressure on them. And like I said, somebody else must have mentioned that to him, because I thought he did much better at that particular part of the job on Saturday. And I actually thought he played pretty well on Saturday. The problem with Frederick too is we've seen a lot of special teams in the first month of the season because the Bruins are taking a lot of penalties, and he doesn't really work on either special teams unit consistently. So he becomes a guy that like loses his feel a little bit and isn't playing and can go, a while and fall out of rhythm when he's not getting a regular shift because the special teams fest has happened. And that's part of it too. And I think that's a challenge for him. And I think that's a challenge in general to keep him sort of playing his best when they're going through stretches like that. So, but to your bigger point, yes, it does not look like the team is all going at the same time. It looks like there are passengers, and a lot of them game to game. There was like, I believe 8 players that didn't have a shot on net in Saturday night's loss to Ottawa. 8 players that didn't have a shot on net. That is awful. That is a tremendous amount of passengers. That is way too many players that did not bring anything to the table in that game, bring their even B or C game to the table. And this is what the problem becomes when it comes to coaching, is when you have that many guys not showing up, and you have that many guys not at their best and not doing their best and not, putting everything out there, especially in the third period where you get no shots on net, something has to change. You can't get rid of all those players, but something has to change when that's happening over and over again. Like you can't live that same day and not do something different and not make a change. And especially when the coach afterwards basically doesn't have any answers for it. Like that's just it's not a good situation. I would look at that if I were running the Bruins and say, what are we doing here? Like we're not getting traction. We're not getting like on a roll. We're not going anywhere right now. And it seems like there are no answers as to how to fix this. Like it's, somebody needs to come in that has answers to these problems and these issues and fix it. Like we can't sit there and say afterwards, I don't know. We'll have to look at the video and figure it out. Like that's not good enough. The players might say that. The coach shouldn't be saying that. And I think I've been pretty clear on that in this podcast, but that's like just how I feel. All right. But thank you for and I do think the players are sick of the constant line juggling. I think part of the reason they played well in the last few games was players were playing with guys they wanted to play with. And I don't know if the coach said to the players, hey, you guys make the lines. Like, let's do it your way and see what happens. But like Zacha was at center playing with Pasternak. Zacha's had goals in his last 2 games. I think that's the best he's played. I think Pasta looked better playing with Zacha. I think Lindholm and Marchand are a really good combination together and played well together. And I think Lindholm brings a little bit of a Bergeron-esque game and presence. So he probably should be playing with Marchand, given the way he plays and what he does. And I think you could see that they were a good combo and they did some good things. So maybe that will stick. We'll see. But I think that's a temporary fix when you turn it over to the players and say, hey, who do you want to play with? Or we're going to like do exactly what you guys want to do and see where it gets us. Like there's only so long you can do that before that doesn't work either. And then what do you do then? But yeah, I think in general, the players will say it doesn't matter who they play with, but I think the juggling gets on players after a while, and they probably want to be on consistent lines where they get used to playing with each other. All right, Fijoli17 on Twitter. When does Don Sweeney wake up here? And if he doesn't wake up, when does Neely or the Jacobs wake up? Well, truthfully, there are not going to be like heavy consequences until fans stop buying tickets. And I don't see that happening. Like, this is still a good team. This is still an entertaining team on most nights. I will say the not playing well at home it can be a problem. Like, obviously, if they don't perform well at home, that becomes an issue where the natives get restless because they're paying a lot of money for these tickets and they're not seeing the effort. And especially if they start struggling in the middle of the division or start going into the lower half and falling out of the playoffs. Like, that's when it would be major changes that need to come. I'm not seeing any of that as of yet, and I think that's the only time the Jacobs would get involved, really. But I do think it's got to be getting to a point where Don Sweeney and Cam Neely say something's got to give, because they've done other things, right? They put Riley Tufte and Max Jones on waivers. They signed Tyler Johnson. Johnson's looked pretty good in the first couple of games. He certainly looks like he's going to help. You know, they've made some moves there as far as with the roster to try to stir things up and to have like wake up calls by like guys sitting next to you is on waivers and gone down to Providence, and that should be a message to everybody that like you need to pick it up and you need to perform. And by the way, I think especially Max Jones and maybe even Tufte too. We'll see how he does down in Providence. But I think you'll see those guys again this year. I think Max Jones will help this team at some point, and he'll probably be back up again. And, we've seen that with other players. We saw that with Jesper Boquist last year, who really wasn't a good fit at the beginning of the year, went down to Providence, and then the second half of the year really like found a job, found a niche, and I thought played pretty well. So I think we'll see those guys again, but they had to sign Tyler Johnson. They had to make the salary cap space by waiving those two players and see what he could do, because I think he just showed he's a higher end player than they are and that he's going to be able to help them more. And we've seen that in the first couple of games. He hasn't scored any points yet, no goals, no assists, but he does have a plus. He's a plus player, like +3. He's had some shots on net, and I think he's shown that he can play top 6 wing and be very useful. I think he was playing with Zacha and Pasternak, and he looked good. You know, they looked good as a trio together. They definitely look like they could play together, and he could keep up with them. So they've been awake. The Bruins have been making moves. The Bruins have tried different things, but it's been sort of like minor fixes or minor messages that they've been sending out. The major ones haven't come yet. The big trade hasn't come yet. Changing the coach hasn't come yet. But I think if they continue to languish in the Atlantic Division and, play 500 hockey and win one, lose one, I think at some point, especially if they're making the same mistakes, if it's the same problems over and over again, I think you have to make a move of some kind to shake things up. Apparently, it doesn't seem like they're there yet, but I think they are trending in that direction if things don't turn around. I really do. But we'll see. They're methodical, and they're not going to like panic, and they're not going to make a move just for the sake of making a move. They're going to make a move that makes sense to them. I will say this, the Bruins are off today on Sunday after the loss last night. They have a practice on Monday. They have 2 days between games. If they really, really wanted to make a coaching change, this would be the time to do it. They would do it right now. They would do it today. They would, maybe have a press conference tomorrow, and they would do it. And I don't think they're going to do that. It doesn't seem like they're going to do that. So, and I've not heard any word that they're going to do that. So I think that tells you that they're going to continue for at least the time being and see how things continue to progress. And we'll see. Thanksgiving is a big deal. You need to be in a playoff spot. The Bruins are in a playoff spot today. They've got 16 points. They're third in the Atlantic. They're definitely down as far as the regulation wins go, and that's going to hurt them in the tiebreakers, and that's important too. They're blowing a lot of regulation wins and having them go into overtime and not really playing hard for regulation wins, and that's a problem. But I don't sense, even though I think it's not going to get better for Jim Montgomery, I think he's going to start getting the hard questions the more the results aren't there. And that may be when a move comes. But like at this point, it seems like the Bruins don't see enough that they have to make that move, even though I think there's evidence that that should be coming at some point. All right, Beantown, and I find it hard to believe he's going to get signed to an extension based on what we've seen on the ice. I just do. Hard for me to believe the Bruins are going to do that, even if the contract talks are ongoing. Beantown fan 8. I think Montgomery knows he's done and he's coaching like it. Let's hope they hire someone competent, not the cheapest option this time. I think he's definitely stressed. I would say that about Jim Montgomery, and understandably so. I would be too. Like, you don't have the answers, or you don't feel like you have the answers. You feel like a lot of players are struggling. You feel like the message you're getting out there isn't getting received and executed on the ice. You don't have the security of a contract extension, and you're feeling the heat. And I think he, multiple times this year, he has felt the heat and he has reacted to it. And at least he's fighting to keep control of the team. Like, that part I understand, and it's good that he's doing that and going down his way and his terms if it happens, and that's what indeed happens. But I also think, like, you get to a certain point, and if you're going down that road and you're holding the players accountable, you have to just do it. You can't pick your spots with that, with the best players to send messages to once and hope that continues to be like an accountability thing for everybody on the team. Like, I think you need to, spread it out, and everybody has to be accountable at certain points. And he has done that to a degree. There's no doubt about it. But I think it shows that he feels the pressure when he's doing that, when he's benching Pasternak for a third period, when he's like yelling at Marchand on the bench, when he's being publicly critical of players, or like there was a game the other night where he benched Beecher as well, the win over the Flames, or Beecher didn't get a lot of ice time. And he shortened the bench, dropping Trent Frederick to the fourth line. A lot of the stuff that's going on is him trying to get accountability and trying to get players' attention. And it remains to be seen if that's going to continue to work. But I do think, I would say he's coaching at times like the desperation is there, and he knows that the pressure is on. And rightfully so. Like, that's the situation the Bruins have set up here with him in the last year of his deal.
You know what team Boston sports fans are most excited about this time of year right now? It's not the Patriots, definitely not the Red Sox. I mean, there's plenty of Bruins fans that are very excited about the Boston Bruins, but I've got to tell you, I think the team that everybody's most excited about is the Boston Celtics. They're excited about NBA hoops coming back. They're excited to go to the Garden and watch the Celtics play, defending that world championship, and watching Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and all of those guys that they've loaded up on their roster. And you know where the best place to get Celtics tickets is, to get tickets to the Garden, to see basketball games? It's our friends at Game Time. Yes, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets by using the app, by getting your tickets through the app. It's the most exciting time of year for a basketball fan. Just look at all the features on the Game Time app. I love the all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows you the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Who detests, I raise my hand, surprise fees at the checkout? Game Time is not about that. They are about showing you upfront what the cost of the tickets are. I am all about that. You can get seat views, get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy the tickets. Lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. If you're looking for Celtics tickets, Game Time is the place to go. You got to take the guesswork out of buying tickets for the Celtics. And oh, by the way, you can get Patriots tickets, you can get Bruins tickets, you can get concert tickets, comedy tickets, whatever you want. But we're talking the Celtics right now. You can use all of those things at Game Time. So create the Game Time app, go to the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. But again, download the Game Time app. It's super easy to use. Create an account and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today for all of your Celtics and NBA tickets, folks. What time is it? It's Game Time.
All right, Sergei Bubtinsky. on Twitter. Maybe management should look into changes when the team constantly does the same thing, regardless of wins and losses. And this is my thing. Yes. You need to change something when you repeat the same mistakes, when you take undisciplined penalties, tons of offensive zone penalties, tons of penalties away from the play that aren't like saving goals. You are definitely flailing on the penalty kill like I haven't seen in years. And Montgomery attributed it to new personnel that they're trying on the penalty kill and trying to work new people in, and that's definitely part of it. But like some of the guys that are having a tough time, some of the defensemen are not new. These are players that have been around for a while. So it's a combination of things, I think. And it's a combination. They haven't gotten great goaltending consistently either from Jeremy Swayman, who's, supposed to be your best penalty killer. So that's been part of it too. But like the combination of taking bad penalties and a lot of penalties and leading the league in penalties and having a bad penalty kill is that's a fatal flaw. That will kill you. You will not be able to consistently win games if those two things are happening. And they've been happening over and over and over again. And they haven't been fixed or addressed properly. And it seems like the personnel is there for this team to be a good penalty kill team. Like I don't understand what that is about. Joe Sacco's in charge of the penalty kill. He's done a great job in the past. Seems like they're really having a hard time and having problems this year. So something needs to change. There's no doubt about it. Same goes with power play. Power play is struggling too, and really the special teams in general just having a bad time of it. But then you also like the offense part and the forcing the offense and forcing plays and turning pucks over because you're trying to do too much. Like all that comes with losing and not scoring goals with like the way that they're playing. That one I understand, and I think that's explainable. And I wouldn't hold the head coach accountable for that and say that that's his fault. I think that's on the players. That's on everybody. And it's a byproduct of struggling at times to produce offense and generate offense and score. Now, the one thing I would say is what I said before, the bad penalties consistent under Montgomery. The penalty kill now not performing under Montgomery. The power play has been real hit or miss. And special teams, I would say, have not been consistently outstanding under Jim Montgomery, and definitely not this year. Like those are the kind of areas, and defensive breakdowns too. When you have defensemen that are out of position and up ice when they should be in front of the net and, are trying to do different things when they need to like focus on stopping the puck and shutting the other team down first, or not screening the goalie and blocking a shot. For instance, that happened last night with Nikita Zadorov. And that's happened a bunch with McAvoy where he hasn't gotten in front of shots and blocked them. Like those kind of things. You've got to change that. You've got to fix that. That's like a problem area that needs to be addressed like immediately. And but the penalties, for me, the penalties and the special teams are the things I consistently look at and say, this is why I would lean towards making a change with the coach, because these have been problems all year. They have not been fixed and they continue to be problems. And like, that doesn't seem like it's getting any better. And that's when you need to find a different voice if it's not getting better and it's not improving despite focused attention on improving it. Kinchmo on Twitter. Starting to think they need a major shakeup. Shuffling lines nonstop isn't doing it. Benching Pasta did nothing. He's lost the room in quotes, but they also need a seismic shift. I'd listen to offers on Charlie McAvoy, get some offense for his giant cap hit. I mean, that's a big deal. That's a big one, trading Charlie McAvoy. I would not do that because the potential is there for him to play great. The potential is there for him to be a number one defenseman. I don't think he's had a great year, but I think Hampus Lindholm has been their most consistent defenseman, honestly. I think he's been the best defenseman they've had. Offensively, he's created things. He did it again. And I think it was last night where he had a take and took it to the net and somebody scored on the rebound. It was either last night or Calgary. But like he's been more involved offensively. He has been pretty solid defensively. He's played big minutes. He's like done his role like really well. And I think he's avoided like some of the penalties that he took last year that really stood out to me as not great either. So I think he's improved his game and I think he stepped it up. And I think he's playing like he wants to stay and he wants to be a member of the Boston Bruins. And McAvoy has struggled and Carlo has struggled at times and Andrew Peeke is now hurt and Mason Lowry has struggled at times. Zadorov, I think, has definitely struggled. Like he's had some moments, but I think he's also like taken way too many penalties. And I think he struggled at times to like being out of position, trying to do too much. like I said last night, I think he flash screened the goalie where he was like skating by the goalie as the shot was coming, and Jeremy Swayman never even reacted to the shot, didn't even see it, and certainly didn't react to it. It was Adario's goal, Michael Adario. Didn't even see it because I think Zadorov was just like going by him as the puck was getting released. So I think Charlie McAvoy's not alone. Like, great expectations come with great power comes great responsibility and great expectations. I think he's a great player, and I think you expect a ton out of him because of that, and he hasn't lived up to that. But I don't think you cut bait on him at all. I think you've got to be patient with him and let him get back to his game. I think he's the kind of guy that maybe could be a lot better under a different coach, honestly. And I think that's why you don't go there. Morgan Geekie, Trent Frederick, those kind of players, could they be in danger of being dealt if things don't get better? Potentially. Like, I think that would be the level of shakeup move the Bruins would make if they had to, especially if they needed to go out and get more goal scoring and get maybe a different, maybe change the vibe in the dressing room a little bit. For Trent Frederick's a popular guy in that room. People like guys like him. He stands up for his teammates. He's a funny guy. He's a good guy. He's a hard worker. Like, I think he's all those things. I have nothing but respect and admiration for Trent Frederick. I think he's a good player, a good person, all that stuff. And I think it would affect the Bruins in a big way if he was dealt. So I don't see that coming. I think you would make a coaching change before you'd start trading players off the roster, especially guys that you're still, very much thinking that they're going to be a part of the long-term picture. But your bigger point about there being a need for a shakeup on this team, I agree. And I think the shakeup is changing coaches. I think that's the most reachable, most realistic, and least potentially high risk or damaging move that they can make. I think they need to do something about the coaching. I think they need to make a change. And I think that's the most logical, reasonable area where they can make a high impact move that will shake things up, that will give this team a boost, that will definitely get them out of the malaise that Jim Montgomery said they were in after the game last night. And it's unfortunate. NHL coaches don't deserve it. I think Jim Montgomery's done a good job during the regular season. Certainly his win-loss record's been excellent. The playoffs have been a little spottier. But I think, sometimes it's not your fault. Sometimes you did the best that you could, and it's just, wasn't working out. And I think it's kind of getting to that point with the Boston Bruins where, they need to see, I think, they need to hear a different voice. They need to go in a different direction and see if that is the thing that they need to boost them forward and get them out of the funk. And if it's not, okay, then maybe you move on to trades. But I think the coach is the next one in the line. After you've waived Riley Tufte, sent him to Providence. After you've waived Max Jones, sent him to Providence. After you've signed Tyler Johnson. After you've done some of the things that you can do with this roster that are not going to be seismic, that are going to be little wake-up calls, but nothing major. I think the next thing is the coach. And you see how they react to that, and if that gets them on the right track, and if that moves them in the right direction. And if, frankly, a different voice brings different performances out of some of these players. And then if it's still the same thing, then you kind of move on to the players. But I think in the line of things that you do as a manager in the NHL to address a team that you feel like is not living up to their potential, I don't think that step is there yet. I think you'd be skipping a step with the coach and moving to that if you started trading roster pieces or core pieces from that group when it probably isn't merited or called for. But that's just me. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. Maybe people think everybody should be traded from the roster, but I would change the coach first and see if that works, and then move on to the roster after that. We'll see what the Bruins do, though. They're in a playoff spot, so maybe they're not feeling the urgency to do it right now. But they are definitely treading water, and they've got to get more out of a lot more players on this team that are seemingly going through the motions or being passengers every night. All right, let's thank our sponsors real quick. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Let's also, if you need tickets of any kind, comedy tickets, sports tickets, concert tickets, Bruins tickets, college hockey tickets, probably. Game Time. Game Time is the place to go. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, of course, but download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thanks to this mailbag episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, answering your questions out there. We'll be back to your regular scheduled program next week with a couple episodes with guests. But for now, take care of yourselves. Take care of everybody, Jerry Springer style, and we'll see you at the rink.